James Joseph Whitey Bulger grew up in South Boston, a place where poverty sat hand in hand with pride. His family was Irish, tough, working class. The neighbors called him Whitey because of his blonde hair. He hated the nickname. His mother was gentle and religious. His father was lost in factory work after an industrial accident. The streets became his teachers. He wasn't like other kids. He didn't avoid fights. He chased them. He learned early that violence didn't just protect you, it earned you respect. The kids who feared him treated him like a leader. The kids who followed him eventually became his soldiers. South Boston was a small world with big problems. Jobs were scarce. Men drank in bars, gamblers lost paychecks, and kids watched all of it. Whitey didn't want to be like them. He wanted power. He started robbing delivery trucks, shaking down corner stores, and doing small jobs for older Irish crime figures. Police noticed him early. Teachers tried to warn his family. He didn't change. He bragged about living faster than everyone else. A reckless heartbeat became his identity. Teenage Whitey led a small crew. They stole cars for joyrides, sometimes to dismantle for parts. He discovered adrenaline was addictive, and so was fear. When he pointed a gun at a frightened clerk, something switched inside him. Not guilt, but clarity. He could control people. Fear was currency, and South Boston had plenty of customers. A judge finally grew tired of seeing Bulger's name. Instead of jail, he was sent into the U.S. Air Force. It was supposed to reform him. It didn't. He fought with officers, ran gambling schemes inside barracks, and was eventually thrown into military prison. He learned something there. Criminals respect other criminals, and the quiet ones are the most dangerous. In the 1950s, Bulger robbed banks. Not one, not two. A string of them. He became a headline. His crew used stolen getaway cars, masks, and coordinated timing. FBI agents chased him across states. They finally caught him in Miami. He was sentenced to federal prison. Behind bars, he met the worst of the worst. Mafia killers, professional thieves, and men who could plan a heist like surgeons plan surgery. He took notes. He didn't talk. He listened, and when he returned to Boston, he came back as something darker. While imprisoned, Whitey volunteered for medical testing. He claimed it was for a shorter sentence, but the tests were MKULTRA, CIA-funded LSD experiments on inmates. The government wanted to see if mind-control drugs could weaken psyches. Bulger endured months of hallucinations, paranoia, and violent mental breaks. He never forgave the government. It hardened him further. He told cellmates he would never again be someone else's puppet. And later, he became the puppet master. After serving his time, he came back to the city that raised him. Southie was changing. New criminals had replaced the old ones. The Irish gangs weren't united. They were fractured, weak, easy prey. Bulger didn't want to join them. He wanted to own them. Quietly, he reconnected with street bookmakers, bar owners, and the Winter Hill Gang. He didn't brag, didn't flash. He walked into a room like a wolf and waited for others to bow. Whitey was not the only success in the Bulger family. His younger brother, Billy, had become a rising star in Massachusetts politics. Respectful, calm, brilliant. The powerful Bulger brothers were opposites. One controlled the streets, the other controlled the State House. Neither talked about the other publicly. They didn't need to. Both understood the value of silence. Led by crime boss Howie Winter, the gang controlled illegal gambling, loan sharking, and horse betting rackets. They weren't flashy like New York mobsters, but they made quiet fortunes. Whitey climbed through their ranks. For every job, he made two promises. Don't betray me. Don't underestimate me. Those who ignored the warnings disappeared. Bulger was different from businessmen gangsters. He didn't hide behind lawyers. He got his hands dirty. A rival once insulted him in a bar. The man vanished. Another gambler refused to pay tribute. His shop was burned down. Bulger didn't send warnings. He delivered examples. South Boston whispered his name in fear. Bulger believed empathy was weakness. He taught his men that violence solved problems faster than negotiations. He shot rivals, buried bodies, and walked home calm. He preferred victims who begged. He said begging reminded him who the king was. Even other criminals avoided his eyes. They said he looked at you the way a butcher looks at a pig. In the 1970s, the FBI wanted to crush the Italian Mafia in Boston, the Patriarca crime family. Italian mobsters were organized and profitable. To take them down, the FBI needed an insider. That is where Bulger saw his opportunity. He met FBI Agent John Connolly, a childhood acquaintance from Southie. Connolly admired the legendary gangster. He wanted to be near greatness. Bulger wanted protection. They shook hands, and history twisted. Bulger offered information on Italian mobsters. He did not betray the Irish. He did not betray himself. He betrayed everyone else. In return, the FBI protected him from prosecution. It was an unholy alliance, a mob boss shielded by the government he hated. To his crew, Bulger was not an informant. He was a strategist. He fed the FBI small leads, letting them arrest Italians while he destroyed the competition. He kept his empire growing. Connolly became his guardian angel, warning him before every raid, every investigation. Bulger laughed privately. The agency meant to stop crime was his weapon. With federal protection, Bulger became unstoppable. He expanded into cocaine trafficking, racketeering, extortion. From South Boston bars to investment schemes, everything went through him. Store owners paid for safety. Politicians looked the other way. Casinos greased his pockets. If someone refused, Bulger would smile, shake their hand, then choke them with it. Southie was filled with ghosts. Men disappeared after arguments. Women vanished after refusing demands. Bulger didn't care. He killed partners and friends. He strangled bookies with bare hands. He buried people in basements and marshlands. The FBI never knocked. The deals were still working. Bulger's right hand was another FBI informant, Flemmy. He was calm, intelligent, and just as lethal. Together, they ran Boston like warlords. The Italian mob feared them, the streets obeyed them, and the FBI pretended not to see. Bulger wasn't chaotic. He was strategic. He used intimidation to take over construction unions, drug markets, and loan businesses. He treated crime like corporate expansion. He even met businessmen in suits, men who pretended to be legitimate while laundering cartel profits. Southie jokes called his drug network Snow White, referring to cocaine. Bulger wasn't a user, he was a pusher. The addicts were broken people, and broken people paid well. He didn't care how many died. Every funeral meant more desperate families, more debt, more revenue. While Whitey ruled the underground, Billy Bulger became president of the Massachusetts Senate. Journalists whispered connections. Billy deflected questions. Whitey stayed invisible. Their relationship was never proven criminal, but everyone knew. One ruled with laws, the other with fear. Businessman Roger Wheeler discovered Bulger was skimming profits from a Florida gambling company. Wheeler threatened to expose him. Weeks later, a hitman shot Wheeler in the head in a crowded parking lot. It wasn't just murder. It was a message. No one uncovers Bulger's secrets and survives. The Winter Hill Gang became a machine of death. Rival drug dealers were strangled with rope, their teeth pulled to prevent identification. Former friends were buried in shallow graves. Informants were shot point blank. The street stayed silent. Agents celebrated their informant. They ignored the blood on his hands. Reports of murders were shredded. Complaints from victims were buried. Connolly defended Bulger like a priest protecting a saint. The FBI didn't realize they had created a monster they couldn't control. Whitey dressed simple, worked out, and loved silence. He believed flamboyant mobsters died early. Al Capone, Sam Giancana, Bugsy Siegel, These were warnings. He wanted to be invisible. That was his camouflage. People who didn't know him never saw him coming. Deborah Davis, the young, beautiful girlfriend of his partner Flemmy, wanted to leave. She knew their secrets. She had to disappear. Bulger strangled her. Flemmy watched. It was loyalty and betrayal woven into the same rope. Despite his power, Bulger was paranoid. He believed someone always waited to stab him. He drove with binoculars, wore gloves to avoid fingerprints, and checked behind every door. He could silence Boston, but he couldn't silence his own demons. The Italian Patriarca family tried to strike back. They sent shooters, paid informants, and plotted against him. Bulger responded with fire. He killed their men, stole their businesses, and bribed judges. He won the war not because he was smarter, but because the FBI fought it for him. By the late 1980s, Bulger had everything: money, fear, territory. He ruled Boston, New England, and beyond. Politicians respected him. Cops feared him. Criminals obeyed him. He was untouchable. Agents in Washington started asking questions. Why was the Italian mob collapsing while the Irish mob thrived? Why did Whitey never get arrested? Why did investigations disappear? Connolly tried to hide the truth, but even government shields have expiration dates. A new generation of FBI agents discovered the dirty alliance. Connolly panicked. Bulger knew it was over. He packed bags, stored cash, and prepared to vanish. He had survived prison, gang wars, and betrayal. Now he would survive the entire country hunting him. Whitey Bulger's record was not a single sin. It was a ledger of abuses. He ran extortion rackets, shook down bars and restaurants for protection money, controlled illegal gambling and loan sharking rings, trafficked cocaine and other drugs, burned businesses that resisted, and ordered kidnappings and arson. He laundered cash through front businesses and used shell companies to hide his profits. Every crime fed the next. Violence protected profit, and profit funded more violence. Bulger's method was simple and efficient. He told a shop owner, "Pay or lose." Payment meant regular envelopes. Refusal meant broken windows, burned inventory, or a body left where the customer could see it. He ran protection rackets across South Boston, Quincy, and other neighborhoods. Owners paid not out of respect, but fear, and the money streamed into his pockets like a municipal tax. Though the Irish mob often insisted it was not a big drug family, Bulger built and protected significant cocaine networks. He managed shipments, distributors, and street sellers. He taxed dealers, collected the profits, and kept violent discipline to stop competition. The drugs that moved through his system ruined lives. Addicts, families, and neighborhoods paid the human cost while he counted income. Whitey lent money to desperate men at brutal interest rates. Those who couldn't pay were beaten, threatened, or had their families threatened. The loan shark ledger was both courtroom evidence and a moral indictment. Loans issued with a smile and collected with fists. It was another steady income stream until victims resisted or vanished. Bulger didn't kill randomly. He used murder as a policy tool. If a man betrayed him, if a witness threatened to talk, if a competitor grew too bold, Bulger ordered death. He approved hits, assigned shooters, and celebrated clean jobs where bodies left no trace. He was later convicted of 11 murders, but survivors and investigators long suspected he was tied to many more disappearances and slayings. Some murders sent public messages. One of the best-known victims was Roger Wheeler, a wealthy businessman killed after discovering Bulger's interference in a Florida company. His execution in a parking lot was meant to show that even money and status could not buy immunity. Other victims included rivals, informants, and anyone who threatened Bulger's systems. Men who were tied to concrete blocks, dumped in marshes, or never seen again. Bulger used arson to punish and intimidate. Bars that refused to pay were torched. Competitors found their buildings burned or vandalized. Arson was not chaotic revenge. It was a line item in his compliance program. pay the tax, or see your business burn. Whitey's crimes extended into the halls of power. He bought off cops, bribed low-level officials, and used political connections to blunt investigations. His FBI relationship with John Connolly was the crown jewel of this corruption. An agent who shielded him, warned him, and sometimes intervened directly. The result? Laws were bent, investigations stalled, and evidence disappeared. When witnesses came forward, Bulger retaliated with ferocity. Witnesses were threatened, their families harassed, and some were murdered. The message to every potential informant was clear: talk, and everyone you love will suffer. That is why, for years, terrified witnesses kept silent while Bulger's crimes grew. To hide dirty cash, Bulger used restaurants, bars, vending businesses, and construction firms as laundries for illegal proceeds. He routed money through shell companies and offshore accounts where it disappeared into the legitimate economy. This made his crimes harder to trace and richer to profit from. The most shocking part of his criminal career was not that he committed crimes. It was that he used federal law enforcement as a shield. Because of his connection with Agent Connolly, Bulger received tip-offs before raids, had friends arrested selectively, and was steered clear of full investigations. The agency that should have stopped him instead became his tool. When Connolly's protection collapsed under scrutiny, Bulger acted. In 1994, rather than face-mounting indictments and the possibility of life in prison, he vanished. He fled Boston with cash, false identities, and a small circle of loyalists. He did not leave quietly. He took cash, files, and the knowledge to survive for years in the shadows. For 16 years, Bulger lived in hiding. He moved across the country, used fake social security numbers, and worked low-profile jobs to avoid attention. He kept a low face, cut his hair short, and lived like a man who could be anyone. That life required discipline, months of silence, careful spending, and cutting ties that could reveal his trail. Ironically, Whitey's life as a fugitive was not a cave of paranoia. It included long periods where he blended into normal American life. Shopping, eating at diners, attending church nearby, and maintaining a modest apartment. He learned to be ordinary on purpose. That ordinariness hid a violent career. His flight cost him relationships and power. Longtime allies drifted. Money dried up as risk grew. But he survived, and rumors of his location multiplied from New Jersey to Florida to California, until finally, the net closed. In June 2011, after years of national manhunts, Whitey Bulger was arrested in Santa Monica, California. He was living under an alias in a small apartment, spending days reading and eating at local restaurants. The arrest shocked the nation. One of America's most wanted men, captured quietly at an ordinary table, proof that even legends grow old and make small mistakes. Bulger's trial was a courtroom drama. Testimony detailed years of violence, murder, extortion, drug trafficking, money laundering, and the betrayal of the FBI's trust. Victims' families spoke. Former associates turned witnesses. Prosecutors painted a portrait of a man who weaponized the law and the underworld at once. The jury listened as decades of criminal enterprise were unraveled. In 2013, Whitey Bulger was convicted on multiple counts, including racketeering, money laundering, and 11 murders, and was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms plus additional years. The verdict was historic. A notorious crime boss finally held accountable for a career of violence and corruption. Beyond criminal verdicts, Bulger's exposure sparked civil suits and public inquiries into how the FBI enabled his crimes. Families sought restitution, and federal agencies faced painful questions about policies that allowed an informant to avoid prosecution while committing new crimes. Sentenced and transferred to the federal prison system, Bulger's life ended in cold concrete. He had ruled through fear for decades. In prison, that fear could not protect him. He spent his final years in secure facilities, aging from a hunted man into a nearly invisible inmate. At trial, The victims' families described broken lives, fathers who never returned, mothers left to raise shattered children, neighborhoods that fell apart under drugs and violence. Those testimonies stitched together the human tapestry his crimes had ripped apart. That moral ledger, the loss, grief, and trauma, was the true record of his life. The Connolly scandal forced the FBI to reform informant handling and internal oversight. Policies changed. Oversight committees examined the damage. The agency's reputation was tarnished. It had to rebuild trust severed by decades of compromised investigations. For a time, Whitey was a folk legend in parts of New England, a man who fought back at outsiders, a gangster who seemed to protect his neighborhood. But the full portrait is darker. A criminal who exploited loyalty, ordered murders, and manipulated the very law meant to stop him. The myth dissolved in the courtroom light. Age caught up with him. The violent man needed medicine, monitoring, and isolation. He spent his final years under heavy guard and medical supervision. The same fierce survivor who once controlled streets waited now for doctors and time. In October 2018, James Whitey Bulger was murdered while in federal custody at a West Virginia facility. The violence that defined his life finally reclaimed him behind prison walls. He was beaten to death by other inmates. He died aged 89. His end was brutal and private. A violent closure to a life of public terror. His death reopened wounds. Families of victims felt both sorrow and a grim sense of finality. Lawmakers revisited the FBI's failures. Journalists dug through the archives. The full list of his victims, children, and ruined neighborhoods began to speak loudly again, insisting that a life of crime not be romanticized. History will remember Bulger in two forced lines: as a powerful crime boss who orchestrated blood and profit, and as an informant who abused the system to kill with impunity. Neither label excuses the other. Together, they explain a career built on moral collapse. Whitey's story became a teaching case: the danger of creating untouchable informants, the moral hazard of trading justice for short-term intelligence, the need for transparency and oversight. Agencies now study the Bulger case to prevent similar moral failures. Beyond the legal facts, his story is a human tragedy. Neighborhoods starved of safety, families buried children, survivors lived in fear for decades. Those human costs are the lasting verdict. No matter how clever the scheme, the damage done to real lives is immeasurable. Whitey Bulger tried to make himself a force beyond law and consequence. He used fear as currency, the FBI as a shield, and murder as a management tool. In the end, justice, slow, complicated, and imperfect, reached him. He died in violence, judged by the very world he terrorized. His life stands as a warning. When criminal power and government collude, the result is not protection. It is catastrophe.